Absolutely. Spot on.
Martin Probst. Hello, Martin.
Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Martin, how are you?
Hello, Martin.
Good yourself?
I'm Martin.
Hey, everyone.
Very
Oh, familiar faces. Always good to see.
Hey, Martin, you're okay?
Anthony Hoy, how
Yes,
are you?
thank you.
Can you hear us, Anthony? Can't hear us.
I think you're just connecting to the audio.
Anthony, put your audio on.
Hi, Sarah. Sarah's there.
We're starting in 1 minute, folks. I like to start on time and I like to finish on time because the people that we attract to these seminars and symposiums are very important people and very busy people, and I don't like to sort of go into a talk fest. So what we like to do is just have the real guts of the issues, discuss them, and then close them down on time. So as everybody who in the past has seen, we start on time and we finish on time, which means we're 6 o'clock. So I'd like to start. We probably will have 2 or 3 people come in a little bit late. We've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 online at the moment. Now, that doesn't mean to say that that is a small number, because as of this morning, we had 302 recorded people who have gone onto the videos or onto the resources. And if you go onto the website, you'll see the numbers there as they actually are recorded. So a lot of people are not able to come on, because of timelines and because they're running restaurants or because they are teaching or whatever, but they obviously are logging in after. I'd like to welcome our panel tonight. Karen, we're very honored to have the 4 presidents here, actually. So you've done us really proud, you 4. Karen Doyle, who's the national president of the ACF. Nick Blackmore, who is the national president of Les Toques. Daman, who is the president of the AITC, and Andrew Wisken, who is the state president of Victoria. So basically, we're going to get their views and their opinions, and I ask that the participants don't interrupt them while they're giving their presentation. We'll have opportunities afterwards to ask them questions, to make your own comments. But basically, we give them about between 5 and 8 minutes to put their case, put their position, and to give us their vision of where we're going. Because the question is this the final curtain for Chefs Association as they currently operate? And it's really all about remodeling if you need to. And the reason why, because if you have a look at the sort of stimulus propositions that I've put up, it took about 25 years for the economy to recover from the Great Depression, and 4 years at least to recover from the GFC. Does that mean, because this is as bad as the Great Depression, or nearly as bad as the Great Depression, are we going to recover anywhere between 4 and 25 years? That's the big guesswork. Over the past 3 decades, there have been many associations that focus on unique interests that have come online. And they've all settled down into a sort of a similar pattern, but they've all settled into a pattern. However, the question begs, will culinary competitions, sponsorship and face-to-face networking be different on the other side? Have you thought about that? Can virtual competitions be the next level and the next development in the culinary world? Will virtual connections be the future, where instead of having meetings, you actually get onto Zoom now, because this is teaching us, all of us, including our clients and our members and a whole group of people out there who never knew about virtuality before and now are really getting interested in it and are looking at it. This probably was already happening with things like Facebook for the young. So will the future of chefs' meetings be virtual rather than monthly or whatever? Now, this last point is, the old school, the old farts like me, George Hill, are getting older and older. And there's a whole new younger generation coming up. The old chefs, I know from experience, are a little bit reticent to get involved with electronic communication, virtuality, and all that sort of stuff, whilst the young are just the opposite. They see that as being the only way to communicate. Is this going to cause a problem to us? Because that gap is growing. So I say to you, what strategies have you in mind to cater for this demographic? And how will you cater for the new younger chef in your association? And last, please, don't forget, it's not all bad. It's also about opportunities. What opportunities can each one of the four of you teach the other three to think about? This is about being a chef, and being in this industry is not about me. It's not about us. It's about an industry. And that's what we've got to think about. So I'm going to ask, please, the order for Karen to start with, for two reasons. One, I always believe in ladies first. I've never thought otherwise. And Karen is the leader of the large organization in this country, followed by Nick, followed by Daman, and then finally Andrew, who's speaking on behalf of Victoria, but also has gleaned some ideas from the other state presidents to give an overall view from a state view. So I hand now over to Karen, and welcome, and please, your take on the questions and whatever else you have.
As I lose my voice straight away, which is unusual for me, for anyone that knows me. I suppose, number one, thank you, George, for the opportunity tonight to actually have a conversation with fellow professionals and associations, etc. I suppose the whole reason that I'm in this is because I love it, and that's why I'm in the position I hold today. And I like to think that industries, associations, and the ACF are fostering bonds, obviously, with the chefs of today to help them, to guide them, support them, and mentor them on their culinary journey. And as we've noticed, since COVID-19 has come in, there's been a number of changes as we're all experiencing today. In some of the questions that were asked were, will culinary competition sponsorships and face-to-face professional networking be different on the other side? I think it's already different. Our vision for the ACF has been, for many years, since 1994, has been a national body with 7 states underneath it. With COVID-19, with sponsorships, with seeing what's happening out there, my vision has changed for the ACF. There's 5 past presidents before me. I'm coming in as the 6th president, first female president. I've sat back and reflected a lot in the last 6 months. I've put surveys out. I've taken questionnaires, etc., in a view to moving forward. Will culinary competitions change? Yes, they will. We've had to, this year, look at what we're doing as the ACF. This time last year, we'd sent over 300 competitors overseas. We'd funded competitions. We'd done, with people in Hong Kong and other countries at this stage. It's not happening this year. Most of our young chefs are out of employment or on JobKeeper, etc. So we've really had to go back and think outside the square of how we can continue these competitions. One at the moment you'll all have noticed is obviously the ACF partners with Nestlé Golden Chef's Hat, and part of our agreement within that is we run the culinary competitions for Nestlé Professional. This year we were debating, do we run this competition? So we've decided to run it in an online forum, as many of you may have noted. So for the first, and we also took into account our New Zealand counterparts. So we've actually brought them into the competition this year with us to be more inclusive, with a view to, in the future, getting the Pacific and other countries involved. With this one, we're doing completely virtually for the state heats. So students, we've set a set criteria, number of questions, etc. The young chef has to put a recipe together and actually video themselves doing it and explaining it. So that's how we'll do it. At this point, we're still hoping that we will be able to have a face-to-face final. But if not, we've plans in place to do a mystery box that'll be delivered to each competitor, etc. So it's had to change. We're doing the same. I feel one area that we really need to be concentrating on is our secondary school kids coming out, years 11 and 12s. So we're doing the same in that space. A campaign is just about to head out now in that space, and it'll be a virtual competition to start. And with the view of putting that onto a public forum later this year. The same with our national apprentice competition. We're going to do it in a virtual forum, but we would like to have those finals face to face, because I believe there's nothing like that, the sizzle of the pan, the taste of the flavor, seeing that young chef. And competitions are all about giving confidence to that young chef to go forward. So there's a lot involved in that. Sponsorships are changing, hence the reason, as I've just said, I've put out a proposal this week to all my financial members, or the ACF financial members across Australia, with a proposal with a view to moving to one association, which is a national association. The reasons for this are it's beneficial to our sponsors. They can sponsor at one level, it filters to all the states. There's better exposure, we're giving value for those sponsorships. Number two, it cuts down from a financial sense, rather than having 7 bank accounts, 7 to 8 different public liabilities, etc., it becomes one. I also think it's very important as an association to have a united voice and one voice, so that we can actually lobby in the correct manners. We can set up as I've planned, if it goes ahead. Even if we don't, I still have business relations set up. I want the ACF to become more of a business moving forward, and that we're a viable business, so we can self-support ourselves too, that we're not relying on sponsorship. So there's a lot happening in that space. Will face-to-face professional networking be different on the other side? I can say yes straight away. As we can see, we're all sitting here in a virtual medium having a conversation. I note across my own chapters and territories, we're having a lot more contact. We're actually now meeting weekly. It's a quick, sharp 30-minute to an hour conversation every week, with monthly board meetings that we've condensed, with a 6-month all-day board meeting twice a year, which preferably will be face-to-face. So I think, yes, networking is very different at this point. Can it replace physical meetings? I don't think there's anything like being face-to-face with someone. You see expressions, you can talk a lot freer, etc. But I think it'll enhance communication across networks, etc., across different areas. It's easier to have state-to-state conversations. It's easy, for me as an educator, I can now stream out across. With the technology, we've had to learn very fast and putting new things into place. I can now talk to a bigger audience. I can get communication out. It's beneficial that it's a professional development that's happening in one state now can be shared across Australia. So there's positives and negatives into that. In regards to platforms like Facebook, well, Facebook, I don't know if it's such a strong platform these days. Instagram's come in. We notice with young kids, if you look at what our younger chefs are using, they're using WeChat, all of TikTok, you know, there's a lot of other forums out there also. So I think it needs to be a very structured communication across social media and platforms, which is one of the reasons with a national body, we would have one Facebook, one association, one Instagram. It just means we've one mode of communication that's clear with everybody. And will future meetings of chefs be virtually driven? As I've explained, looking forward for me, yes, a lot of it will be virtually driven. Number one, it means we can meet more frequently. It is less cost to the state. I'm not impacting on my chapters, on their time, because we have to be mindful with 7 state presidents and myself as national, we're all volunteers. We don't get paid for this. We've got full-time jobs, so I have to be very cognizant of time, which I think during this COVID-19, it's really brought it to the fore how busy people are at this time. Like, I know for us as an association, we've been quiet for a couple of months, and that's purely because all our volunteers were concentrating on their livelihoods, their jobs, their employees, etc. So moving forward, I think it will give us greater ability to communicate, make decisions faster, and get things moving in a more coherent and faster fashion. And as it says, will associations take this opportunity for future searches? Well, I've already started doing that. I've put out a proposal paper to my own members. I have conducted a survey which has based some of my decisions at this time on. So yes, and I will be sending another one out very soon to have a SWOT analysis in that. And the impacts of COVID-19 have been having to think in a completely different way. I've had a vision, obviously, as a new president coming in, I have had a vision coming in, and mine is that as an industry, we need to communicate more. We need to, as associations, work together more, regardless if we're different associations or we amalgamate as one. We need to use these opportunities to lobby for what we need to, you know, especially with training packages, salaries, etc., wage conditions. As one voice, I believe we can do a lot more. Sorry, I'm taking a deep breath. So I don't know if that answers everything, but I've tried to do it in a very quick manner because I'm conscious of the 5 minutes.
You've done a wonderful job. You've been very concise and made some very, very good points there. So thank you. Anything else you just want to add quickly, or shall we move on?
I think we'll move to the next person. I can breathe for a minute.
Mr. Blackmore, welcome. Hi, it's over to you. Your take.
Thanks, George, and good evening, everybody. I think, is this the final curtain for our associations as they stand? I don't think it is. Obviously, I think we need to make some adjustments to how we operate and how we perform, but I don't think we're at the death knell quite as yet. I think it's important to ask the question why the group was, why various associations were established in the first place and whether they're still relevant today. So if I look at Le Top Blanche, we were founded basically as a social and networking association or networking group for Melbourne's executive and senior chefs. We are the only remaining Le Top Blanche chapter in Australia. So I think we've done a reasonably good job to this point, adapting and evolving with the times as we've gone.
Yes, maybe.
And it's important to note that we're only as strong as our members. So no matter what the economic situation, we're only as strong as the input from our members. So I think that's important to note as well. I know a lot of the times over the years, Le Top Blanche members have, borrowed cutlery, borrowed crockery, borrowed equipment from each other. So we've used it as a networking tool in that fashion. Will that change moving forward? I hope to some extent it doesn't, because I think that camaraderie is important and how we use our networks in that way. The way we communicate with our meetings, I think it has to change with the current situation. We had our first online meeting last month and it went really well. We had interstate members join us who've moved from Melbourne interstate and still want to be part of the group. It was nice to see them take part. For me, it was nice not to have to dash from work at the last minute and try and get to a meeting on time. So it was nice just to log on and be face-to-face with people. To be honest, we did miss that social interaction. I think that, talking face-to-face, we have missed the glass of wine at the end of a meeting. And that just camaraderie was missing from the meeting. But obviously in these times, we have to do what we have to do. I think over the years, chefs' roles have morphed. The executive chef of 20 years ago, that role is not so prevalent these days. We're wearing multiple hats, so we've had to change in that way. But I think for Le Top Blanche, we meet every month. We are proactive. We meet every month. We have a strong committee with a core, of consistent contributors, and we have regular member interaction as well. So we're not just like a group that you join and you pay your membership fee and that's all you do. We are very interactive. We have our regular meetings. We have our regular gatherings for family and friends and industry partners, which is important. So, that's sort of, I guess, what we're based on. And also why members join your association is also important to ask. And the majority of our members are in it for that social interaction and that networking opportunity. So, we certainly do consult when required. We promote apprentices and apprenticeship competitions. We have our award for excellence each year. This year, unfortunately, I think under the current circumstances, our competition won't go ahead in its current format. And we're meeting very soon to look at other options as to how we progress. As Karen mentioned, I think it's important to have a final as a face-to-face cook-off. You can't, I think a virtual competition to a point is good, but I think you need to see the finished product and the apprentices cooking and going through their paces in that actual, real life forum, especially when there's, I think the prize for our winner is a $5,000 stage overseas. So I think to do that virtually could have issues because you don't know if it's their actual work that they're doing. So you need a real life one there. So I think our association does have a place in the current climate. I think moving forward with some changes, we can adapt, and do that well. I do think, and I do support the need for a national body. And I think that, the ACF is our national body moving forward. And I think the fact that you have your 7, state presidents feeding into that national role is important. And I echo Karen's sentiments that all the associations should work more closely together. We had a little Zoom meeting or our meeting a few months back, Karen, Daman and myself, and we all agreed that we could do more together. And I think moving forward, we need to do that. So I do certainly support a national program with the ACF in that regard. So that's my view on the situation. As far as Facebook, we have a Facebook page. I don't think it serves us terribly well. Again, as Karen mentioned, the young ones are TikToking, they're FaceTiming, they're Snapchatting. I said to my daughter about Facebook and she said that is so old hat, you're behind the times. So, I think Facebook has had its day, but people like to scroll through and see the photos and stuff, which is good. It's I guess passive marketing to a certain extent, but I don't think it's a huge benefit to us. So yeah, that's my take on it, but certainly very happy to support a national movement with the ACF, and I think LTB as a state association still has its place with our senior chefs in town. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Wonderful. Daman, now you're ITC. What's your take?
Thanks, George. Thanks for organizing this forums. Thanks, Karen and Nick, and welcome everyone. Behalf of AITC, I say good evening to everyone. My take is, first of all, it's very fluid situations. It's not a final curtain, so there's a lot more to come. How we be ready, that's the important part. How we accept it, I think we have to accept as it is, what's happening. And I think this is what is happening. We are uniting ourselves through this. We can see it now and last few forums that we are thinking ahead, how to move forward. Industry is suffering and it's gonna get worse. And as associations, organizations, we have to think how we're going to support young chefs, the industry, the suppliers, their standards, because if they are not engaging, they are not selling, they are not promoting, they're not getting supported by us, they're going to suffer more. So my suggestions take is that we organize as AITC that we got more into the online symposium lectures for members, and just getting into sort of culinary technical chefs, culinary college, so we can actually give as much as we can, and just making sure we promote the suppliers. We have something for them to promote that products online, so we can really support them. We can support the industry. I think that's the most important part. As an educator, it's going to be very, very hard. I think Karen will agree that now international market will completely, is going to go more than 60% down. How we going to survive? How we going to support the industry, the manpower, the chefs, intake of chefs? That will be a question mark. Demand and supply for the industry is going to be big tasks. So how are we going to do that? Associations, well, online meeting, virtual meeting is the way to go. It's more convenient, as we all know. It's not time consuming, it's cost effective. Social gathering, well, as Nick said, we always miss glass of wine end of the meeting, but again, we have to accept it what it is. Association working together, I am big favor of working all the association together. If we can get into one big association so we can represent, we have our voice to the government or for anything, that's the way we have to move forward. So that's my take. We have about the competitions, virtual competitions. Well, I agree with the theory part. We can do a lot of theory part of the competitions, but again, it comes to our senses. Once it comes to the food in the plate, looking at their technique and those ones. So it can be adjusted, and it has to be adjusted. The competition is a very big part of learning for the young chefs. Complete automation of technology to be used in application process. So we have to make a balance at this stage to be the technology. And again, it's very fluid situation. We don't know when the second wave is gonna come, what's gonna happen next day, next moment, and we have to just work together. It's a good sign that we are all looking at this forum. We are talking to one another, and we're looking at that direction. So that's my take.
Thank you, Daman. Thank you. Now we've got a view of a state president, more near the coal face, and he's also got some ideas from the other states, ACF states presidents. So Andrew, it is over to you.
Thank you, George, for this time again. I've probably become a regular on here. It's probably not good. I think from a state point of view, I mean, I'm new to the role as a state president, and the things that I've seen, I think competitions are important. And I also think the face-to-face competition, because in a kitchen, we're very social people, and our young are very social people. And yes, it's good to be on line like this and all that sort of thing for the situation we're in today, but I don't think we can get away from the actual face-to-face or saying hello to somebody, because you can see what people are thinking when you actually see them face-to-face. So I don't think that will change. Yes, it has at the moment, but I think it'll be an important thing to get back to. As in terms of associations, I think associations for our industry are important, and they need to get stronger. And also, all the associations need to work together better. We see a lot of noise being made out there by people who really don't understand how to deal with, they talk off the cuff. I can be blamed for doing that. But I sort of have an understanding of how governments work, how the teaching profession works with my years. And I think it's important that these things grow, and we have an association that doesn't speak off the cuff and understands how the industry is working. I'll be a little bit controversial here and say that I don't think the associations should be top heavy with teachers in there, because they have a very pointed direction they want to go. We'd all like to be teachers and, you know, have a nice lifestyle, but some of them work long hours and all the rest of it, the same as the rest of it. But it becomes a very skewed sort of direction. I know in the past, associations it's been easier to run because from a school point of view, because you have the support of the college or whatever it happens to be at your fingertips, I suppose, getting a bit of government support there. But I think in the past, a lot of associations have got away from the core business, and that is supporting chefs who are actually in the trade. We support our young with our apprentice competitions and secondary schools competitions, but younger people today are very social. With all these Facebook and social media things, you can see that they're social. And I think it's to try and get them back and have social gatherings rather than just sitting and TikToking or whatever it happens to be. I mean, this has all been a learning curve for me, using Zoom, and now I belong to another thing that they want to use Teams, and it's all too much to learn. You know, once you get learning one platform, then someone wants to use another one. Social media is the same thing. We all get used to Facebook, and now suddenly then Instagram comes, and then TikTok, and you know, I have WeChat when I'm in another country, and I have Line when I'm in another country. It makes it very difficult. I think from a state point of view, I've got to try and get back to a face-to-face thing as quickly as possible to get with members. The members, I think today, if you look at, especially even with these forums, there's a lot of people who have managed to come on every time, and we get a few different people. But there's no time which is good for anybody, as you know, if you're working, teaching has changed. Restaurants are starting to reopen again, so maybe that's why we didn't have that many people this time, because of the time frame. And I think most people have said it all, but the communication and working together is going to be the key, and everyone accepting that we need to have one body that speaks on behalf of everyone, but communicate with all the other associations and get their feedback, rather than, you know, going, I'm top dog, I know it all. I used to work for a big hotel chain, and because they were the biggest hotel chain in Australia, they thought they were the best. Just because you're the biggest doesn't make you the best. Unless you communicate and see what everyone else is doing, you get lost in the woods, and somebody else comes in behind you and starts to nibble at your toes. You know, it's like a restaurant. A little suburban restaurant opens up where I live. There's 20 shops over there. If a little restaurant opened up, it would do well. Then another one will open up, and all you do is share the same amount of money between a lot of smaller organisations. I think, you know, we need to grow as one industry rather than just one organisation. That's about all I've got, guys.
Thank you, Andrew. Just to let you know, with one of your points, you know, about different numbers at different sessions, you're quite right. I had 12 apologies for this session, and by far the biggest reason why is because I'm at service at that time, and I've had more chefs actually at the afternoon sessions than the evening sessions. So it does show you that, you know, there is no time. I've looked at all sorts of different ways and times to try and satisfy everybody, but again, I point out that the number here doesn't reflect who is actually listening. Everybody knows about the recordings. This one will be on by at least Friday, and people are just locking in and looking at the results, looking at the summaries. And I'd ask the four presents, if you can just give me a very quick summary, or email a very quick summary to put on the resources. It goes against your name and your association, which it does help people to quickly grasp what has been said. So that's an important thing. So I now throw it open for any comment before we sort of direct. And if you have a question, please, of a particular president, I'd ask you to please identify the president for the answer. Does anybody have any particular questions? Sounds like a class I used to take. Paul, you've been around the track for a long time, and you're a consultant. How do you see associations operating in the future from a participant, not from an administrator point of view? What would you like to see them do, other than what they're doing now?
Well, as I've pointed out before, just to be more relevant. So, I think what Karen and what this ACF is doing is, forming a national body which has the power to lobby, the power to engage directly. That's definitely something that needs to happen as a first course, because you have to put the infrastructure in place first, and then it's a matter of getting people interested in this is an effective body that can actually do something now.
Okay. Anthony, what about you? What's you're both an ACF member, but also out in the field. What do you think is people are looking for? Chefs are looking for being a chef rather than a teacher yourself. What is chefs looking for to belong to an association? Something maybe different.
Well, definitely support. I think we've covered it in our last few meetings. And I suppose I agree with what Andrew said too, just to interact with others, share, combine, I suppose, our knowledge, and get off the whole egocentric, I suppose, nature of the way chefs used to be, or the way that we used to act, and start combining together and getting in there. I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, especially my suppliers who are struggling just as much as every other business out there, they're offering so much as well. I suppose we're a little bit behind in paying our bills with them and what have you, but they're actually offering suggestions and what have you as well. They don't want to lose contact with anyone that's they've been associated with in the past. And I've got the same with people that I've used to work with as well. They're just ringing me up intermittently and more or less, I suppose, fishing for something to do. And I'm putting it out there with them as well, our association that we've got, that we're all involved with here in Victoria. And I'm hoping that in general, I feel fairly positive about the vibe out there at present. Those that are continuing feel quite fortunate that they are continuing. But it's always been a concern to me, the young, and supporting them as well. We've got a fairly new company that I'm involved with in the Yarra Valley, and it's all a little bit too hard for young people, and with all the negative feedback we've been getting from the media and the industry, namely the maid establishment, they feel, as I've had it as direct feedback, they don't really feel that they'd be supported in the industry like we've got all their better things out there that they can be involved in. So I suppose just quickly, just to sum up, the amalgamation and the that we can actually benefit in mediums like this is something that I'm really looking forward to.
Well, just to follow on those comments, I mean, last week we had an analysis of whether how relevant are chefs associations, and that came out unanimously that they all want a one approach. That was absolutely unequivocal. So I think that sentiment is again endorsed by this group here. So that's something that, Karen, I think you should be very pleased with what you've done. You've jumped off with a great start, and I think you're going to get a lot of support for what you are you know, in the throes of doing. So that's just to let you know where we are. Incidentally, one comment I'd like to make about virtual competitions. I don't know whether it's changed that much, but about 6 or 7 years ago, I ran virtual competitions on the internet. And in 3 years, I had 600 competitors. And I had winners who were even actually on cruise ships. And I had strategies in place to run competitions virtually, including knowledge competitions, as well as practical competitions. And I'll be quite happy to talk to any of the presidents about what I did and how I did it. And also I've revived that particular website, which used to be called ozchef.com. And it took me years to create that site. I took it off because fundamentally I went into what I thought was going to be retirement, which is going to come back again, hopefully. But it's got 5,500 questions, and it's got 59 subjects and 3 different levels in each subject. So you can test people at any level in almost any subject. But that's interesting. I particularly believe that there is a place for virtual competitions, and I not only believe that just because I think it. I have the evidence of that it can be done. There are some issues, there are some strategies that you have to put in place, but it will never, ever, ever replace the practical. That there is no doubt about that. But it can actually quite easily supplement the practical in a very, very good way by taking. You may have 100 people apply, and you could bring that down to 10. To the 10 best people in certain strategies, and then you run a smaller practical for that. Anyway, maybe I'd like to. Murray, are you there?
Hi guys.
Hi, Murray. Murray, I think it'll be interesting to hear the take on. You're from Thailand, and what are your chefs associations out there? Are they doing anything else or anything different to attack the crisis, or is it?
Look, at the moment, the colleagues that I'm surrounded by are mainly expats from Europe and Australia, etc. I don't have a lot to do with the Thai Chefs Association. It's not reputable as what other countries are. But in saying that, the expat community here are mainly hotel driven on a sort of a level under hotels and resorts. It's usually on a local level. Hotels are not open yet. We're still all locked up here. Curfews are still in place, although it's been extended till 11 o'clock. We're following pretty much Australia. As far as the chefs circles, the colleagues that I'm around, they have enormous amounts of work to do, whether it's open or not, being at that exact level. So at the moment, there's just the hospitality industry is dead as far as the big brands go. None of the big companies like Minor, any of those are open. Still ghost town in most Phuket, Samui, etc. So I don't think it's going to come back before the end of the year. So most of the hotels here are up for sale. I would say more than 100 of the big brand hotels are all empty and up for sale. So it's hit pretty big here because Thailand's above 50% tourism is their dollar. But the expat community here, as far as chefs, is huge. There's about 500 chefs that are on social media every day helping each other in doing cook-ups for poor people up country, all this sort of stuff. So we're keeping busy. As far as my college goes, I won't be opening until December. I've decided to close 1D until December. So that's 300 plus students that won't be coming back for the next 3-month term. So over here, it's slowly opening on a local street level. Everything's open. You can get your 20 baht pad thai anywhere. But on a more professional hospitality level, it's closed. Yeah.
Oh my God, what a crisis. No street food in Thailand?
No, no, that's all you can get. All you can get.
Over to you, Martin. You've always got a good vision of what's necessary and what associations should be doing. So I'd like to get your comments on the question and what you think associations can do.
Thanks, George.
That may be different.
Thanks, George, and good to see you, Murray, and everybody else, of course, as
You
well.
too. Sorry, late. Nice to hear your voice, mate.
Thanks. Look, I'm going to stir the pot as always, George. I guess you have to count with that. If you hand it over to me, to cut it short, I think we're playing it way too small. What I'm saying here is I think we are talking a lot about specifics, as important as culinary competitions are. At the moment, I think we have bigger problems. And what I'm saying is, if you maybe have seen the news as well from yesterday, the construction industry, which stayed open all the way through, what do they ask? Actually, let me say that differently. They don't ask. They are demanding $13.2 billion federal injection. Now let's compare that to hospitality industry or commercial cookery. I think we were one of the first industries that have been closed down. We are one of the last ones to open up. Where are our support? Where is our connection and lobbying, if that's the right word, with the federal level of governments to actually get support? And I just hand that over.
Anybody comment on that? It's a true point that, we're probably should asking for 100 million or 100 billion for hospitality to try and help us. So, Sarah.
I just put a link through so you can read up on it. Okay. And I think it's really interesting from the master builders. They were on the drum on the news yesterday, and they're just making an ultimatum. They don't ask, as I said. They just demand stimulus packages. So I think we can learn a bit. I'm not saying that we should go that extreme, but I think we need to really come together, same message. I know it sounds like a bit of a broken record, but I think we do need to leverage from each other and make an association big and strong.
Terrific. Sarah, how about the secondary schools? You're involved with a lot of competitions out there and the secondary level too. So what's your take? You got your volume down. Paul, we'll come back to you, Sarah. Paul, what about you? It's from a college point of view at William Angus, the mother college in Victoria. What do you think associations can do to help the education college, the institutes? Oops, you got your audio
on now.
Audio, got your audio off.
I'm under control now. I found the right button.
Sarah.
Obviously, we rely a lot on international students, but what I'm looking at is we should promote to schools and the secondary schools especially to promote apprentices to try and get more there. But even then, it's the retention rate that's the problem. But and if we have the one organisation, which I thought would be a no-brainer anyway. I mean, I've been a member of the CIA, the APCC, ever since 1974. I was a member of those organisations, but now with the ACF, of course. But yeah, if there was one large body that could promote our industry and even look at upping the respect for executive chefs, like in Europe, the larger hotels, the executive chef is really respected, which doesn't really happen so much in Australia. And it's a culture thing. I don't know what happened there. You get people like George Colin Barris that really, put another nail in the coffin, so to speak. You get all these things happening, but if we've got one large organisation, we can start promoting at the bottom, at the school level already. Which, when I was at Northern Beaches, we had one teacher in charge of 2 or 3 schools to go out and speak to the students, to get the students into the college for their vet learning. So, yeah.
We do that. Sorry to interrupt, Paul, but we do that here in Thailand weekly. We do road shows where chefs, a chef from the hotel and from the college with all the admin staff will go and talk to 3 or 4 schools a day, week in, week out. And it's certainly, it gets the village country kids to have a chance to come down to the city. We help them with accommodation, all these sorts of things. I think it's got to be a group. Definitely, I've come in late, but I vote one organisation that goes to government level, school level, and really supports the industry from ground level up.
Yeah, we're in a sad situation at the moment. The lady that was doing our school promotions actually resigned just before COVID hit. But yeah, she would go out to schools and do little masterclasses and mocktails and all sorts of stuff to get the kids interested in the industry and to come out to our college and sit down for a meal and see what the kitchens are like. And that was us just trying to promote the industry. But I think it needs to be larger than just each individual college.
Sometimes to go forward, you have to look back. And I reflect on the fact that back in 1984, around the mid-80s to 90s, it's a long time ago, and it just shows you that these grey hairs up here are not dyed, they're real. But the AGPC, as one of the organizations that existed in Victoria then, had a strong committee, but it also had on a committee a person who used to organize some members to actually go out into secondary schools and talk to them. Now, that sort of disappeared. I don't know why. I think people just got too busy. People got too busy. Maybe they lost their direction or whatever. But the AGPC was just a state organization. Can you imagine this done on a national level? And I think that we're in the business of not convincing just chefs. From my point of view, it's convincing the public. When we convince the public the importance of being in an association, associations will grow because the chefs who are not will see it as being important. That's my take on that anyway. Renee?
How does a young 16-year-old kid at school get to talk to a chef without walking into a back of a kitchen? They can't. Career advisors would not be up on what it takes to be a chef and what dedication and passion. Yeah. So how does a young 16, 17-year-old make a decision to become a chef and join the hospitality industry when they don't have access to those people?
Maybe we should run virtual meetings with the associations and parents.
You need to get into
advertise that
evenings. You need to get into parent-teacher evenings. It's not just the kids. The parents are literally forcing kids away from this industry.
Yeah, forcing them to go to university, saying, get yourself a higher education, yeah.
Yes, they're pushing them away. You need some way of getting to the parents.
100% right.
The kids is not enough.
And therefore we need
presentations
to make the
in schools, you need
attractive.
events. Yes, absolutely. This whole wage theft has destroyed the perception of this industry as far as parents are concerned. They just do not want to know. And I know that from the coalface. I get treated very badly on parent-teacher evenings.
Can I just chime in there? Because I'm obviously a qualified chef, but I've had 2 children that have followed in my footsteps. And I'll be 100% honest. I actually made one of them go live with their father because she was in year 11 and I said, you are not leaving school to become an apprentice chef. This is not happening. And they both went on and defied me and did it. And the reason is, and I hope I don't get people off side here, is because, as I said in, I think, the last webinar that I was in, is that the industry is unregulated. And as a parent, to send a child into an industry that is, one, brutal, it's full of bullying, it's full of harassing, it's full of unpaid work. And I've stood up, as I said before, in many cinemas. At TAFE, we actually go out and we promote at schools. We have open days. We have expos for school leavers. We do all that stuff. But the industry, and this is probably where it comes into having a strong association that we need to clean up the industry as a whole. And until that happens, I'm sorry, but our exit rate is going to be very high. Parents are not going to support that industry, because I've been through it, where I've had a child that come home with major anxiety and won't get back to work because someone spoke before about having respect for executive chefs or whatever. But, you know, sometimes they don't deserve it, because the way they treat the young, and it's not a blanket statement. I see the kids. I have them come to TAFE and they, you know, they're not getting paid. They take a weekend off to go to their uncle's wedding or whatever, and they get sacked. Until we fix that from the top, it's going to filter down, and we're just wasting our time with the rest. It doesn't matter how many expos we go to. It doesn't matter how much we try and do a glitzy, come and decorate a cupcake to look like a unicorn. Come in, come in. Until we reform that, it's not going to change.
Yeah.
That's right. It's, as you said, it's the bullying, it's the harassment, it's
100%.
wage theft, it's all of that that has given the industry a bad name as well. And it's the retention rate. Now, we can enroll lots and lots of students, but where are they 5 and 10 years down the track? Are they still in the industry, or are they selling something?
My 2 children that both became qualified chefs, as soon as they were qualified, they were out the door.
Yeah.
And that's 100%. One went stayed in sort of hospitality, but it went off into a completely different branch. And the other one's now, he became a paramedic. So,
could I ask a question of everybody? Is this a modern phenomenon?
it's not modern, but I think in these days, we educate our children now to not stand up to bullying, to stand up to workplace harassment, to stand up to being fair work. In our day, when I was an apprentice, I got brutalised by most of the chefs I worked with. When I worked for Qantas in a kitchen the size of 7 football fields, and every section we got moved to, their main aim was to make that apprentice cry and leave. And I'm telling you, we were brutalised from getting my toolbox aspect together in a big jelly thing every morning tea, to get my uniforms found in the blast freezer, to have a German chef with a beef fillet whack me across the head. That's what they did. Wow. And to them, it was a rite of passage. Yeah. Now, luckily enough, it's made me who I am, and I'm strong and I'm vocal, as you can probably tell. But for the other children, when my child wanted to do it, my first daughter, I was mortified because she's not strong. And it just takes, we're still getting through that whole rite of passage of, you know, you've got to earn your stripes. And I still work with teachers at TAFE, and I'll happily say it, that teach exactly the same. They scare the students into thinking that that's a good form of learning, and it's not. I'm completely the opposite. You can't teach people in fear. And that's how you guys will all know as apprentices or as upcoming chefs, that's how we learn, in fear. It doesn't work. And people won't cop it these days. They won't let their children cop it. The young ones won't cop it. They're too well educated when it comes to that.
That was one of the major outcomes of the first session we ran, where people said, you know, the tyrant chef is gone. And so is the tyrant teacher. I think that was very well, and you can see the summary of all that on the website. So I think that I don't think you know, it was 99%. Everybody said, you know, the tyrant chef will never come back, and thank God for that. I must say it's 6:57 and 3 minutes to go. We need to move on. As you know, I'm pretty strong on closing at the right time. I first of all would like to thank our 4 speakers. I think you've done a wonderful job, and I think each one of you have done a great service and justice to your association. I really do. I congratulate you on behalf of the people. This, I think, video recording will be a very popular one, and I also ask you if you can promote it, because the more of your association members see what you've said, the more we'll get together and believe and understand and start to really work together, because it'll be one mission. So thank you, Karen. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Daman and Andrew. You've done a great job. The next panel will be on how the pandemic will reshape food service. We've got 4 restaurateurs, some from large operations, from wineries, and again, they're going to give their take on how it's affecting them personally, and how they're affecting, how their industry, how their operations being affected. As you know, it's not necessarily about policy, because we're not in the position of making policy, we're only in the position of following policy, but there are personal issues, there are personal experiences, and there's personal conversation. And we've got, you know, very, very good speakers in the next one. and hopefully we can see you there. Please send me any points at all that we can improve on these seminars, because you know, it's just a crazy idea that I've put the stuff together, but I need help maybe in, you know, George, you should be doing this or that or whatever, and I'm perfectly willing to listen and adjust in whatever way. So there's the next topic coming up, and I'd like to say thank you, and if there's nothing else for anybody to say, I hope all of you have benefited from this